Who's going to be your next governor? As candidates start announcing their running mates, one political expert weighs in on whether the winner will be a Republican or Democrat. It's more up in the air than you might think. Sophia Jernander breaks us down.
It's 6 months until the Kansas gubernatorial election, out of a pool of 24 candidates who will win the race. Historically, Kansas hasn't elected the same party twice, but one political expert says you shouldn't count on that.
Nationally, we anticipate it's a good year for the Democrats because of President Trump's low approval ratings. Of course, he has more supporters in Kansas.
For the Democrats, it's Ethan Corson versus Cindy Holscher.
I'd say Corson because of the Kelly endorsement. But Cindy Holscher is running a very serious professional campaign.
Cindy Holscher selected her running mate, Representative Casey Ohabasim, from the Wichita area. Dr. Smith says that might boost her chances.
We both are fighting for the same issues, ensuring that we have access to affordable health care.
Over to the Republican side,
I think that there is a first tier emerging that's Collier, Schwab, Masterson, and maybe Vicki Schmidt.
One of those candidates, Secretary of State Scott Schwab, believes he stands out because of his professional working relationship with Democrat Governor Laura Kelly.
They like a professional attitude. They want you to come across as someone who comes across as a well representative for their state, not somebody who's a shouter.
But the group of people to watch will be voters who don't like Trump or the Democrats and are looking for an authentic candidate on either side.
Undecided voters are far fewer in number than they were 50 years ago, but they do exist. I don't think Laura Kelly would have served 2 terms as governor without them.
In Wichita, Sophia Jernander, 12 News.